What if every moment of anxiety was really an invitation to deeper faith? What if your uncertainty isn't a threat but a setup for God's best? What if peace isn't found in control but in complete surrender? We live in a world addicted to worry. Fear is fed by headlines, fueled by comparison, and multiplied by uncertainty. We worry about the future, about our families, about finances, about what others think. But into this swirl of anxiety, God speaks a simple, freeing command. Do not worry. This isn't denial, it's direction. Jesus didn't ignore the pressures of life. He acknowledged them and then offered something better, trust. Not trust in outcomes or feelings, but trust in God Himself. In Matthew 6, Jesus said, "Your Father knows what you need." He doesn't just see your struggle, He is already working in it. Trusting God's plan doesn't mean you'll have all the answers. It means you believe He does. It's the quiet resolve that says, even when I can't trace His hand, I trust His heart. And that heart is good, faithful, and always for you. Consider the birds of the air and the flowers of the field. They don't worry, they don't strive. Yet God provides. How much more will He provide for you, His child, His image bearer, His beloved? Worry accomplishes nothing. Trust releases everything. Worry thrives in the unknown, but faith flourishes in the unseen. Trusting God means believing that His plan is better than your expectations, that His timing is perfect, and that His ways are higher, even when they don't make sense. It's not passive, it's powerful. It's the decision to rest while the storm still rages, knowing He holds the wind and waves. Trust is built in the waiting, in the silence, in the surrender. It's not proven in comfort, but in conflict. Abraham trusted when he left everything behind. Moses trusted in the face of Pharaoh. Esther trusted when the stakes were life and death. Jesus trusted in Gethsemane, saying, "Not my will, but yours." This same invitation is extended to you, to stop carrying burdens you weren't built to bear, to stop rehearsing outcomes you were never meant to control, to place every fear, every question, every what-if into the hands that formed the universe and still hold you. God's plan for you is not fragile. It doesn't break when life feels heavy. It doesn't falter when the path isn't clear. His plan is rooted in love, written in grace, and carried out with perfect precision. And your job isn't to understand every step, it's to walk in obedience, one day at a time. So stop worrying. Start trusting, not because everything is easy, but because God is enough. He is your provider, your shepherd, your father, your friend. He is faithful in the fire, present in the pain, and sovereign in the silence. This is just the beginning of learning to live free from fear and anchored in faith. Stay with us as we continue this journey toward peace, purpose, and powerful trust in God's unshakable plan for your life. Worry often disguises itself as responsibility. We convince ourselves that if we don't obsess over the details, everything will fall apart. But the truth is, control is an illusion. The more we try to grasp it, the more anxious we become. That's why trusting God's plan begins by loosening our grip, not on life, but on the need to control it. God is not asking you to figure it all out. He's asking you to trust that He already has. Scripture says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding." That's not a suggestion. It's a command that leads to peace. Because leaning on your understanding will exhaust you, but leaning on God will establish you. Trust is not about perfect faith. It's about persistent faith. It's choosing to believe even when the feelings don't follow, when the job falls through, when the relationship ends, when the diagnosis comes. Trust says, "God, I don't get it, but I know you do, and I will keep walking." The irony of worry is that it promises protection but delivers paralysis. It tells you that thinking more will solve more, but it only steals your peace. Jesus asked, "Can any of you by worrying add a single hour to your life?" The answer is no. Worry adds weight, not time. Stress, not strength. So what do you do instead? You worship. You pray. You open your hands and give every concern to the one who invites you to cast all your cares on Him. Why? Because He cares for you. Not just in a general, global sense, but personally, deeply, intimately. God doesn't just tolerate your fears, He welcomes them. He meets you in them. He speaks peace over them. But you have to bring them to Him. Lay them down in prayer. Replace anxious thoughts with Scripture. Fight fear with faith, not force. And remember this, God is a redeemer. Even if things don't go as planned, He can repurpose pain. He can redirect disappointment. He can reshape your story in ways more beautiful than you imagined. His plan is not always predictable, but it is always purposeful. Sometimes the greatest acts of trust are the smallest steps forward. Choosing to get out of bed when life feels heavy, speaking life when everything around you feels negative, saying yes when God opens a door, even if it scares you. Trust grows in action. Each time you obey, even while uncertain, your faith is strengthened. Each time you resist the urge to control, your peace is preserved. And the more you trust, the more you'll see His fingerprints in places you once feared were forgotten. You don't have to know the whole plan to take the next step. God's guidance is often revealed progressively, one prompting, one decision, one moment of courage at a time. That's why it's called a walk of faith, not a leap of clarity. Keep walking. Keep believing. Keep laying your worry down and lifting your eyes up. The same God who parted seas, calmed storms, and raised the dead is writing your story, and He's not done yet. Worry thrives in the spaces where trust is weakest. It grows in the gaps between our prayers and God's answers, between our desires and His timing. But those gaps are not voids, they are opportunities. They are the very spaces where trust is meant to grow, where faith finds its footing, and where peace is planted. To trust God's plan is to believe He sees what we can't, that He's working behind the curtain of our circumstances, aligning what needs to align, removing what needs to fall away, and preparing us for what He's preparing for us. Trust doesn't always come with details, it often comes with a whisper, "I've got you." This is why surrender is not weakness. It's wisdom. It's choosing to rest in the one who has never failed. It's saying, "God, I choose your plan over my pressure, your pace over my panic, your will over my worry." And in that surrender, we find supernatural strength. Remember the Israelites in the wilderness. They worried about provision, but God gave them manna every morning. They feared the enemy, but God split the sea before them. Over and over, He proved His presence, and He still does today. He is your provider, your protector, your peace. Worry also diminishes your view of God. It subtly suggests He might not come through, that He might forget, that He's somehow less than faithful. But the cross proves otherwise. If God did not withhold His own Son, will He not also graciously give you all things? You are not forgotten. You are favored. Trusting God's plan reorders your focus. It shifts your eyes from the problem to the provider, from the chaos around you to the calm within you. It reminds you that circumstances may change, but God does not. He is steady when life is shaking. He is strong when you are not. This trust doesn't mean you won't have questions. It means you bring those questions to the right place. You don't internalize them. You surrender them. You trade the weight of wondering for the warmth of His word. You stop analyzing and start abiding. God doesn't promise a life without storms, but He promises His presence through them. His plan includes peace, not the absence of trouble, but the presence of Jesus in the middle of it. And when you realize He's in the boat with you, the storm loses its power. Each time you choose trust over worry, you're building spiritual muscle. You're learning to live from a place of rest, not rush, a place of confidence, not chaos, a place of assurance that what God starts, He finishes, and what He promises, He fulfills. So breathe, be still and know. God's plan may not look like yours, but it's better. His timing may not match your expectation, but it's perfect. And His purpose for your life is unfolding, even in the silence, even in the struggle. You are not alone. You are not off track. You're in the hands of a good, wise, sovereign God. And as long as you're trusting Him, you're exactly where you need to be. Trusting God's plan means accepting that your timeline is not His. It means letting go of your watch and embracing His will. His ways are higher, His thoughts deeper, and His timing perfect, even when it feels delayed. What you see as a setback, He sees as setup. What feels like silence may actually be preparation. Faith is forged in the waiting room. In those in-between moments where prayers feel unanswered and direction feels unclear, trust is tested and deepened. It's there, in the stillness, that God works on your behalf and within your heart. He's not just changing your circumstances, He's transforming you. This transformation doesn't always look glamorous. Sometimes it means learning patience through prolonged seasons. Sometimes it's growing in peace while surrounded by pressure. Sometimes it's standing still when every instinct tells you to run or fix or force. And in those moments, you become stronger. Not because life is easier, but because your spirit is anchored. That's the gift of trust. It anchors you. It keeps you grounded when storms swirl. It reminds you that your foundation is not circumstance, but Christ. He is the rock that doesn't shake, the shepherd who doesn't stray, the savior who never sleeps. Worry tends to magnify what's wrong. Trust magnifies who God is. It lifts your vision above the chaos and lets you see with kingdom eyes. Suddenly, your fear loses its grip. Not because everything is resolved, but because you remember who holds everything together. God's plan for you is not fragile. It is not derailed by delays or damaged by detours. It accounts for your weaknesses, your wounds, and even your worst moments. Grace fills the gaps, and love leads the way. What the enemy meant for evil, God turns for good. Always. That's why you don't need to panic when life shifts. You don't have to understand the full picture to trust the artist. Your story is in capable hands, and no matter how dark the chapter, light is coming. Because the author is also your advocate. This kind of trust requires intimacy. It grows as you spend time with God. In His Word, in prayer, in stillness. As you get to know His character, you find it easier to surrender your cares. Trust is not blind, it's informed by His faithfulness. His track record is flawless. And when you walk in that trust, your life becomes a testimony. You begin to inspire others, not with perfection, but with peace. Not with control, but with calm. You become a living picture of what it means to be guided by grace and covered by confidence in a God who is always good. So stop striving. Start surrendering. Let go of the script you wrote for your life and make room for the masterpiece God is crafting. You'll find that His version is not only better, it's the one your soul was made for. And in that place, worry fades. Fear dissolves. Faith flourishes. Because you finally realize you don't have to know it all, you just have to know the one who does. When you choose to trust God's plan over your own understanding, your entire perspective begins to shift. The things that once seemed urgent lose their grip, and peace begins to take root. You start to understand that delay isn't denial, it's divine development. What feels like a closed door might actually be God's protection. What feels like waiting is often His way of weaving something deeper into your faith. This is the kind of trust that brings freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom to rest in whatever God allows. It's the kind of freedom that lets you release expectations, surrender outcomes, and say with confidence, even if I will trust, even if the door doesn't open, even if the prayer takes time, even if the outcome looks different than what you pictured. Worry is often fueled by imagination, worst-case scenarios, what-ifs, things that may never happen. But trust is fueled by revelation, what God has already said, already done, and already promised. His word is your anchor when the waves of anxiety rise. His spirit is your guide when logic has no map. When you trust God's plan, you stop being reactive and start becoming reflective. You learn to pause, to pray, and to discern rather than panic. You ask God, what are you doing in this moment, rather than rushing to fix it on your own. Trust gives you space to breathe. It also gives you strength to act when the time is right. Trust isn't passive. It's active obedience, rooted in surrender. It's taking steps in the dark because you believe the light is with you. It's walking by faith, not by sight, knowing the one who sees the end from the beginning is leading the way. There's a quiet power in those who trust deeply. They may not have all the answers, but they walk with assurance. They may face hardship, but they are not shaken. Their confidence is not in circumstances, but in Christ. And that kind of trust becomes contagious. It invites others to believe again, to hope again, to release control and embrace the peace of God. You don't need to worry about missing your purpose when you're walking with the one who wrote it. God's plan is not something you fall out of when life gets messy. It's something He weaves into your very mess. His grace isn't just for your salvation, it's for your navigation. He leads with clarity, with patience, and with perfect timing. Let this truth sink deep. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not failing. You are being formed. You are being refined. You are being led by a shepherd who knows exactly where you need to go and exactly what you need to grow. So take a deep breath, loosen your grip, and lean into the one who has never let you go. The God who called you is faithful. The plan He has for you is good. And your story, right now, is still unfolding, beautifully, purposefully, and perfectly in His hands. Trusting God's plan also means learning to let go of timelines that were never yours to hold. So often, we bind our peace to milestones. By this age, this job, this relationship, this breakthrough. And when life doesn't unfold according to that script, anxiety creeps in. But God isn't following your calendar. He's fulfilling your calling. His process isn't rushed because His purposes are eternal. He's not building temporary success. He's shaping eternal significance. That's why some seasons feel slow. Not because God is absent, but because He's laying foundations too deep to see. The quiet seasons are often the most critical because roots grow in silence. And those roots are what anchor you when the winds rise. They're what hold you when the spotlight fades, when the crowd thins, when the outcome doesn't match your prayer. Trust means saying, God, even in the unseen, I believe you're at work. It's the faith that says, this doesn't feel good, but you are good. That goodness isn't based on your circumstances, it's based on His character. And when you get to know that character, you find peace that doesn't make sense, joy that doesn't need a reason, hope that doesn't depend on headlines. This is the fruit of faith in a faithful God. Trust also gives you the ability to celebrate others without envying them. When you believe God has a plan for you, you stop comparing your journey to someone else's highlight reel. You can cheer for them, knowing it doesn't threaten you. What God has for you is for you, and it won't arrive a minute late. This trust doesn't eliminate your effort, it reorients it. You stop striving for control and start sowing in obedience. You plant seeds of discipline, prayer, excellence, and faithfulness, trusting that in due season you will reap if you don't give up. And even when results seem delayed, you keep showing up because you know who you're doing it for. God sees what others don't. He values what the world overlooks. He counts your tears, your prayers, your sacrifices. Nothing is wasted, not the silent nights, not the broken dreams, not the waiting. He is the God who works all things together for good, even the things that make no sense right now. So lean into that truth. Let it steady your heart when worry tries to creep in. Let it quiet your spirit when fear starts to rise. You don't have to figure it all out. You just have to follow the one who has. He knows the way, He wrote the map, and He walks with you every step. Let that be enough today. Let trust lead the way, let peace follow, and let the love of God be the atmosphere you breathe, even when the path isn't clear, because He's never failed, and He's not about to start with you. When you finally begin to trust God's plan more than your own preferences, peace becomes your posture. You no longer wake up with dread, wondering if today will spiral out of control, because your confidence is rooted in the one who already holds the day. You begin to live from victory, not for it. From grace, not grinding. From calling, not comparison. And in this space of surrender, clarity starts to rise. Not always in the form of answers, but in a renewed sense of purpose. You stop asking, what if everything goes wrong, and start declaring, even if it does, I'm not alone. You stop calculating every variable and start calibrating your heart to the voice of God. That voice isn't frantic. It doesn't rush. It whispers peace. It speaks wisdom. It reminds you, I know the plans I have for you. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you a hope and a future. And those words become the soundtrack of your days. Trust allows you to be present. Not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. Worry always pulls you into a future that hasn't happened or a past that's already over. Trust grounds you in the now. It gives you permission to live fully where you are, knowing God is working behind the scenes. You begin to see life differently. The detour isn't a delay, it's divine redirection. The closed door isn't rejection, it's protection. You start looking at every disappointment through the lens of destiny. You begin to understand that no isn't always punishment. It's preparation. Because when God says no, it's always to make room for a better yes. And that yes may look different than what you imagined, but it will always be better. Not because it checks all your boxes, but because it aligns with God's best. He's not trying to withhold anything from you. He's trying to lead you to the fullness of what He created you to experience. When you walk in this kind of trust, your life begins to inspire others, not through perfection, but through presence. You become a person of peace in a world of panic, a voice of calm in the chaos, a testimony of what it looks like to live led, not driven. You stop needing constant reassurance from people because you have the unshakable affirmation of God. You don't need to chase approval. You already have divine acceptance. You don't fear missing out because you're confident nothing good from God will pass you by. So let go, again and again, not just once, but daily. Surrender isn't a single decision, it's a lifestyle. It's waking up and saying, God, I trust you more than my plans, more than my fears, more than my timeline. And in that surrender, you find strength, security, and supernatural peace. This is the life God invites you into, a life free from the prison of worry and full of the promise of His perfect plan. And the more you trust, the more you'll see it unfold, not always how you imagined, but always better than you believed. As you grow in trust, you begin to understand that God's plan isn't just about the destination, it's about your development. He's not in a rush to get you somewhere. He's committed to shaping who you become on the way. Every detour, delay, and disappointment becomes part of the process that matures your faith and molds your character. Worry wants to speed things up. Trust is willing to slow down. Because trust knows the deeper the foundation, the higher the promise can rise. You begin to welcome the slow seasons, not with frustration but with faith, knowing that God is refining you for something greater than comfort, calling. And calling doesn't always look grand, it often looks like obedience in the quiet. Trust teaches you that small steps matter, that unseen faithfulness matters, that doing the right thing when no one is watching matters, because God sees. And He rewards those who seek Him, not applause. The more you trust, the more you release the weight of what you can't control. You stop trying to manipulate outcomes, people, or timing. You rest in the truth that your story is safe with the author. And in that rest, creativity is reborn. Joy reemerges. Passion reignites. You start to see God's fingerprints everywhere. In the conversation that confirms what you prayed for, in the door that didn't open and the one that did. In the strength that came when you thought you had none left. In the peace that came when everything around you said panic. That's how trust works. It heightens your awareness of His presence. God doesn't just want you to trust Him when things are good. He wants to be your anchor in the storm, your still point in the chaos, your confidence in the unknown. When you learn to trust Him there, you find a kind of strength the world can't explain and circumstances can't take away. This trust also leads to transformation. Your prayers change. They become less about outcomes and more about alignment. God, help me want what you want. Shape my heart to match your will. That kind of prayer scares the flesh, but strengthens the spirit. It opens the door to supernatural peace. You realize you don't need to see the whole path, just the next step. And as you walk in obedience, even when the destination is blurry, your faith grows sharper. Your confidence in God becomes stronger than the voices of fear. And your peace becomes louder than your questions. This is what it means to live fully surrendered, trusting not in the plan, but in the planner. Not in the promise alone, but in the one who made it. And when you do, you live free. Free from fear, free from the pressure to prove, free from the need to control what only God can guide. So breathe deep, step light, trust fully. You're not behind, you're not off track. You're exactly where you need to be for God to do exactly what He wants to do. In you, through you, and around you. This is how trust becomes transformation. This is how peace becomes your posture. This is how you stop worrying and finally live. As trust takes root in your life, you start to live with a confidence that defies logic. Not because you know all the answers, but because you know the one who does. This is what it means to live in divine alignment, where your spirit is no longer driven by pressure, but led by peace. Where decisions aren't reactive, but prayerful. Where your first instinct is no longer panic, but prayer. Worry loses its grip when trust becomes your reflex. And trust becomes your reflex through practice. Each day you choose to believe God again. You choose to surrender the small things, the big things, the unknowns. Trust is built in repetition. It's strengthened with every God, I trust you, spoken through tears or smiles. You begin to see that trust is not just for crisis, it's for the ordinary. It shapes how you respond to your kids, your boss, your bank account. It influences how you handle delay, disappointment, and disruption. Trust turns your entire life into an offering of faith. The more you walk in it, the more resilient you become. Not immune to pain, but immune to despair. You stop needing constant confirmation because you have a continual connection to the one who confirms your worth. You stop chasing clarity and start cherishing closeness. When you trust God's plan, gratitude flows more freely. You begin to thank Him not just for blessings, but for the lessons, for the moments He said no, to protect you, for the times He closed doors that looked good but would have led to regret. Gratitude shifts focus from what's missing to who's present. You also learn to hold your plans more loosely, not carelessly, but with the kind of open hands that say, God, if you want to take this and do something better, I'm ready. That kind of trust creates space for God to exceed your expectations, and He often does, immeasurably more than all you could ask or imagine. The beauty of trusting God's plan is that it quiets the noise. The voice of comparison fades. The fear of failure shrinks. You're no longer performing, you're progressing. You're no longer striving, you're stewarding. Your peace becomes louder than your pressure, and your purpose becomes clearer than your panic. This is what freedom feels like. Not the absence of challenges, but the presence of God in the middle of them. A steady calm that carries you. A deep knowing that even if the winds blow, you will not be moved. Because your life is not built on comfort, it's built on Christ. So let your life preach this trust. Let your joy speak of His goodness. Let your calm reflect His closeness. And let your peace be the loudest part of your testimony. Because when the world sees someone walking in trust, they see a glimpse of heaven's peace on earth. This is the invitation, to trust God radically, follow Him fully, and rest in His unshakable plan. It's not just possible, it's powerful, and it changes everything. When you stop worrying and truly trust God's plan, your life becomes a testimony of peace in a world of pressure. It's not that problems disappear, it's that you're no longer defined by them. You're no longer swayed by every shift, every delay, every what if. You are anchored, rooted, steady in a storm because your hope is not in outcomes, it's in God. This is the life Jesus died to give you, not one ruled by fear but filled with faith, not driven by anxiety but guided by assurance. He didn't just save your soul, He saved your mind, your emotions, your everyday. He invites you to live freely, joyfully, purposefully, and peacefully now. God's plan isn't fragile, and you're not too broken for it. You haven't missed it. You're not too late. You're not too far gone. If you're breathing, you're right on time for His grace. He doesn't need your perfection, just your participation. And as you say yes to Him, He leads you step by step. You'll stumble, but He'll steady you. You'll wonder, but He'll whisper. You'll wait, but He'll work. You'll weep, but He'll walk with you. This is trust. This is faith. This is the life of someone who knows that God is not just able, He is active, right now, in your story. So what do you do from here? You breathe, you pray, you worship, you rest, you release control again and again. You choose to believe that His plan really is for your good, even when it feels uncertain. You stop striving and start surrendering. And as you do, you will feel the shift, not just around you, but within you. Because the goal isn't just a better life, it's a freer heart. And that's what God wants for you. Not more worry, not more pressure, but peace. Deep, lasting, supernatural peace that passes understanding and guards your heart and mind. So say it with confidence. I will stop worrying. I will trust God's plan for my life, and I will walk in peace no matter what comes. If this message has encouraged you, subscribe to Think Fresh Daily for more content that breathes truth into your everyday life. We're here to help you grow in faith, live with purpose, and walk in peace. One step, one truth, one video at a time. Keep trusting, keep believing. The best